it's not going to be a new Cold War, and it won't be. It's not a bipolar world. I agree with Bart on that. It's not a new Cold War because the Soviet Union was not really an economic player, and the U.S. was much more powerful in those days. Today we have China as a major economic player that can use that very effectively, and the U.S. is much weaker than it was during the height of the Cold War. So I think that this is going to affect, I think, a lot of the thinking here. I would say it's either a multipolar world or it's an apolar world we're going into at this point. And I think it's in the U.S. interest to try, because it has to compensate now for its less leverage and less power than it had in the past. It really has to ally with as close as it can with its closest partners, that is the Europeans, to come up with a common approach to China. I just don't see the U.S. On its own really being able to cope with China. It reminds me a little bit of well, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I think and I agree. I think that the EU, we'll see. It could be actually more powerful and more cohesive with the Brits leaving with Brexit. We'll have to see, but there could be now more cohesion coming from there. And the Franco-German relationship seems to be reviving a little bit now as Europe has gone into crisis. So so I could see Europe. I think Europeans are underrated in the U.S. As a major player, and we do have major divisions in our public in our politics on Europe. The Republicans tend to be more along the unilateralist lines and tend to denigrate Europe, where I think the Democrats very much think like many Europeans. If you look at public opinion polls, they tend to be very close on climate change, on the Iran deal, on the whole issue of multilateralism. They're much more pro-European. So I think there's a real, as everything else in this crazy country right now, everything is polarized. And so I do think that this is going to be a problem for the Europeans, is trying to ask themselves, what kind of America are they dealing with? How can you deal with a country that's so unpredictable at this point and so polarized? So I do think that, just to conclude, I think even Pompeo, Secretary Pompeo, a couple of weeks ago, came to Europe and said that the U.S. and Europe ought to work on China. I think that outside of Trump, there's a realization, even among Republicans, that it's folly to go against both Europe and China and Russia all at the same time and isolate yourself. So I think you're going to see a sort of an attempt to recreate a new sort of multilateral relationship based on Europe.